I saw some more movies in February. Uh, let's put them up on the wall. The first one of the month. I think we saw it like the first day of February, so it was like just made into this one. But I'm so glad it did. We've got Companion. Companion is just a banging time. Like so far, and even including all these ones that are here, I think this is one of the ones that I just enjoyed the most. It was just such a fun time. It's a very wild ride of a film, but it is also hard to talk about because it's one of those ones where it's like you kind of need to go into it pretty blind, which always is hard to talk about. But your acting is on point. Like Jack Quaid and Sophia Thatcher are both just on a hot streak of films recently. I mean, I know she was also in Heretic, which I didn't exactly love, but that wasn't her fault. I just think the movie's kind of silly, too silly. This movie's like funny awkward, and that might not be for everyone, but I'm a fan of funny awkward. I want to say this film does suffer from a bit of COVID plot, where it's like small setting, it's very like small cast of characters. I think that you're gonna feel like there's gonna be a lot of those films coming out in the next like 6 months or so, just because I feel like it's just a runoff of COVID. But yeah, this film's great. I want to talk about this movie so much more, but you just gotta go see it for yourself. It's one of those ones where I'm just sitting next to my partner and we're just like giggling like schoolgirls because it's so ridiculous, and it just kind of keeps going and just snowballs into something far more sinister than what it started off to be, and that's just a fun time. Like I feel like this is gonna, for me, it's like a 9 out of 10. Like I love this film. I feel like film nerds and essay guys who really break down this film a lot better than I will ever do, of just like how thematic and how things are like wrapped together and whatnot. And I think that's fine. Anyway, starting off the month pretty strong. Companion, like I'm not gonna spoil it, but go see it. It's great. So what I've done now is, because sometimes I just can't get posters, and I mean, a poster for Amelia Perez is not exactly one I want up on my wall anyway. Didn't exactly love that, but I'm gonna collect all the tickets from when I saw them, and I'm gonna put them up on a little corkboard. I didn't get a chance to do that today because this it's this movie's fault, right? I've been sitting on all these movies for a little while, like maybe like 2-3 days, and I'm trying to figure out how I feel about this one in particular. Because I hate it, but I hate it in a way I just don't think it's a good film, right? And I'm trying to like remove myself from the very not so great stuff that's come up about it in, conversation. Yes, the penis to vagina song is not very nice, and it's not very well sung. All the other stuff around it, right? The racism and the transphobia and all that type of stuff. I just feel like my first experience with this film is just a bit, you could have told it in a way without it treading on so many toes. And I think that's where that's how I feel about this film. There is something in there that I didn't hate, but there's also something in there that I'm like, does it really need to be this insensitive? I think is what it is, right? Your entire plot is just like racist, transphobic Mrs. Doubtfire, a lot more dramatic. You can also feel the Oscar bait to this as well. And you can feel like it because everything's in subtitles, and it's just like I had to focus in more, so I kind of had to hold judgment on it. I'm just a dude, right? I don't know much about a lot of these issues, but I can tell it's very tone deaf when it comes to handling those situations, right? It kind of just uses it as a plot device to move a story forward. And again, you could have handled it a lot better. There's also a couple of great shots especially of Amelia Perez with the gun. I'm gonna keep that one on me. I just feel like it's being very hot buttony. Oh, I'm gonna create as much kick up as I can to get my movie enough buzz that people have enough eyes on it. It just feels like a very, very manipulative way of making a film for a story that didn't exactly need it. And I think that's it. I think that's exactly how I feel about it. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it is just something that it knew what it was doing, I feel. And that's the part that I'm really like annoyed by. I think it's like a 2. It's like a 2 out of 10, right? I'm probably being a little bit too light on this film, but I'm just a guy, I'm just a guy. Maybe I'll rewatch it and have a fuller comprehension. But yeah, I don't know. Okay. Anyway, continuing on. That one was a bit of a hot spot. Captain America. Captain America. I was trying to get the red shield one, which I thought was pretty cool. But what can you do? People always have this conversation of like of Marvel films. We're so back, and then also we are so done at the same time. This one, Captain America. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I I don't. I think the trailers did a lot of its heavy lifting, and that's okay. You don't get a lot of what the trailer promises in terms of big cinematic fight scenes between a lot of the highlighted characters in those trailers. But the movie's not bad. It's not great. It's okay. That's like the final kind of straw of it. It's okay. Being your 30th movie in your franchise, being okay is fine. There's a lot of pressure when it comes to being your, when you start getting up there, it's like, oh man, they were so good back in the early, the early 2010s. It's like, yeah, but you can only produce so much. I know I'm defending this film. The film is fine. It feels more like like a modern day action film than a Marvel film, if that makes sense. We're a bunch of dudes and we've got a problem to solve, and then they solve it, and then that's the end of the day, right? I mean, I think you showed your villain off too early, for this film. Oh, it's this guy, and then you spend maybe your second act trying to like follow all the breadcrumbs to lead to the good guy and the bad guy fighting each other. It's like, oh, you could have waited to show that reveal, because by the second act I was kind of checking out. It just rips off the entire plot of Incredibles 2. I don't like Incredibles 2. I just think, unnecessary sequel. Now, surprisingly, Captain America feels more like Captain Iron Man because of all the power and the tech. It's just a goofy time. Look, this movie is got a little bit of cheese to it, but like a cheese in the way of an action film. Yeah, that's like a 5 out of 10. It's very middle of the road. Like when you're watching it on your marathons, you won't hate it. You won't love it, but you won't hate it. Did another marathon, so it's 5 films. We're lacking in posters, sadly. I have some more here, but I have a couple of tickets for the corkboard. I want to get to a corkboard. Anyway, another point. So we saw a bit of a marathon. We did 5 films in a row between 10 to midnight. You guys know the drill by now if you've been here before, and if you haven't, like and subscribe if you got this far. So we saw number 5. There's a bit of glare, my bad. This one was pretty good. This one I was like, I had it on my list for so long. Like I saw the trailer, I was like, that's interesting enough that I want to go see it. I just had a great time. The movie is very tense and dramatic. If you haven't seen it already, or if you don't know anything about September 5, it is about the 1972 Munich, Germany games, like during the Olympics, where an attack takes place. I don't want to say too much more, because if you don't know, then it kind of like builds it up a bit more. You definitely get a sense of, oh, everything was hard, and everyone in this movie was in a position of, we are so underprepared for this thing that happens, and you have to just deal with it. And people are, everyone's scrambling and trying to figure out the right way, ethically and morally, and so much more than that, to show and what they can tell. And it's good. I felt like the anxiety of it all, and I felt the stress of it all. I think it's a great time. There's a couple of shots where the guy's just like covered in like telephones, and he's got one here, and he's got another one there, and he's got like a wire wrapped around his neck, and he's got another one on the other end, and he's just trying to put it all together and make something happen, and it's just very satisfying. I think this is definitely going to be one of my like contenders for currently for the year, and I think September 5 is like an 8, a 9, depending on how you feel about it. Anyway, it's like an 8, it's like a 9. I had a great time. The next one we saw was Heart Eyes. So that's the new slasher film. Heart Eyes is the movie that came straight out of like the horror slasher factory, the cheese factory, if you will. And I do like a bit of cheese. I do known to nibble on some Gouda, and I do know, and I'm not particularly fond of horror slasher films, but this one, it's like a horror comedy rom-com slash thing, and it borders on being very like, you know, young person coded humor that doesn't always work, but it almost does work in a lot of the times where it doesn't work. Like, I'm thinking it's shooting like 80% it makes me laugh. The other 20% I'm kind of like, I'm not like, oh, I'm not like mad about it. I'm just like, oh, it wasn't, you just didn't hit it. But I got it. I understand the humor of it all, right? Your plot is ridiculous and it's silly, but that's just like the plot of most of these horror films. It does a Scream 6, if that makes sense to you. I'm sorry I spoiled it, but it does a Scream 6. The ending is not my favorite ending in the world. It's like a 6. It's like a 6. I had a great time. I thought it was pretty solid. So the next one we saw was Nisha. Yeah, Nisha. Nisha is one of those ones. Yeah, so instead of the traditional ones that we've been seeing, so we usually would do a Bollywood film at the end of the day. We decided to do some Chinese films because, you know, it is Chinese New Year. Like, it is the month of Chinese New Year, so a lot of Chinese films came out, and I was like, okay, cool. And if you don't know about Nisha 2, props butchering the name, by the way, I do apologize. But this film, in 10 days, it's made $2 billion. I have a running like bet with some friends of mine that it's going to be in the top 5. I don't think it's going to be any higher than that, but you know, who knows? It could go higher, it could go lower. Well, it's not going to go lower, but it's good. It definitely, you know, I think it's going to stay probably around like your number 5 worldwide, which is insane for one, a sequel to a movie that I have now seen like after the fact, which is not great. It's just an action film that whatever. But this one, it does kind of go crazy. This one, you definitely have to have seen the first one for a lot of the plot to make sense. And I had seen this one, so the second one, in theaters before seeing the first one, because I was like, oh, let's just go into it pretty blind. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. Everything is in Chinese. There's people fighting each other. There's dragons. They're fighting God. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And that is fine. I very much expected that to happen. You know, just because I expected it to happen doesn't mean I don't know what's going on. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed this film. This film is fine. I think I appreciate it more after seeing the first one, because the first one is kind of mid. The first one's like here. This one's like up here, right? I enjoyed this second one. I think it's a very solid animated action film. It's visually very gorgeous. You just can't get away from how visually pretty this movie is. There'll be a lot of things that end up like on people's screenshots and background photos of people's phones, because it is that pretty, right? For a film that made $2 billion in the box office, I wasn't expecting little boys to be pissing in like crockpots. The twists and turns are fun, like how the plot unfolds, and you know, good guys turn bad guys, turn good guys again. It's very fun. I wasn't expecting a lot of that to happen, but I was sitting there going, you know, and then yeah, obviously your big fights are just breathtaking and stunning. I think this movie, if it came out like a month earlier, you'd just give it the best animation award, because like the Oscar for best animation. I know China doesn't really particularly care, but like this movie should have like, it's easily one of the prettier like films I've seen in a very long time. This is a franchise that should, you know, it should reach the Western audience, and people should get to enjoy this. I mean, as long as they don't whitewash it and like make a live action one, I think that is something you should not do. I also think you should just have better voice acting, especially if your foreign film is going to make over $2 billion. They won't have a very good English dub, and that sucks. But you know, it's fine. This movie is like a solid 7. Like it's a solid 7, maybe a solid 8. Hang around for that post-credit scene if you do end up watching this film. It is a true banger. It did give me a lot of good giggles. All right, back to Poster Town. The monkey. People needed to talk about the monkey, man. This movie needed a lot more buzz, because this movie is chef's kiss, just a dumb horror film. Oh, it is the worst thing. Your whole like plot of this film is essentially just like Final Destination meets a little bit of like Demon Monkey mixed with like a tad bit of Home Alone, and you're set. And that's it. That's all you need. And the action, and the gore, and like just how people explode with for no reason. Just a good time. It's not out here trying to like reinvent the wheel. It's not trying to make you think about, you know, something bigger. It's just, this is a demon monkey and it is killing everyone around them. And that's just a fun time. It just picks and chooses who it wants to kill, and they just die. And I love how everyone in the town that gets affected by this like monkey curse, they're just so chill. They're like, yeah, like 6 people have died in the last like 8 hours. I'm like, what do you mean 6 people have died in the last 8 hours? What? If Hard Ice came from the cheese factory, the monkey came from the spicy cheese factory. You know, everything's just a little bit sharper. And I love this movie. It's so goofy. It's not, you know, it's not particularly scary, but it's very gory, and I just think that is so okay. This movie's also just like a 7. Like, I'd rewatch this, you know, chuck this on, have a little drink or two, and just have a great time. This movie's so dumb. Mwah. So we rounded out the marathon with another film. So we had Detective Chinatown. Oh, if ADHD was a film, it would be this one. I was not a fan of this film. This film, maybe because a lot of the time people, like, I get a bit delirious come to the end of, you know, 15 hours of, probably like, I don't know, 10 hours of watching content, right? But that's not the point. This film is not that good. I feel like I would have had that opinion whether I watched it first thing in the morning or like middle of the day, right? This movie is just not a thing that is very well done. So spoilers, right? There's a bunch of murders happen in like 1900s Chinatown in like San Francisco, yeah. And there's racial tensions and so on. One of some nobleman's daughter dies, and they're blaming it on Jack the Ripper. And I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. I'm blaming it on Jack the Ripper. So Sherlock Holmes decides to show up for a scene, and instead of, you know. And then he just goes, I don't want to do this one today, and hands it off to his Chinese kind of like prodigy. And then they solve the murder alongside a Native American Popeye, Hulk-esque kind of guy. And it's just like, what is going on? And I don't think the film exactly knows either. This movie's like 2.5 hours long, and the second murder doesn't happen until like maybe like an hour and a half into your film. And the rest of it's just them kind of like just faffing about, being like, I'm not fit to solve this case. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. There's a thingy over here, and they're meeting all these characters. And I mean, if you like a whodunit, this one is not amazing. I mean, you can kind of put it together pretty early. And this one also does a Scream. Oh my god, everyone's doing a Scream. For a film to go for 2.5 hours to be a murder mystery kind of deal, and your second murder doesn't happen for an hour and a half in your film, but like then the third murder happens, and then they solve the murder within like 15 minutes of both the other 2 murders happening. I feel like it was just, they're like, oh, we forgot this is a murder mystery. And then they're like, oh, this person's dead and this person's dead. And now figure it out. And then they do. And it's like, oh, okay, sure. I was just not having it. This movie is so chaotically disjointed that I just could not get behind this film. But there's a lot of homoerotic tension between all your male characters. You only have one woman in this film, and she has like maybe like one scene of dialogue, and then she dies. And that's it. That's it. I'm like, whatever. Anyway, this movie's like a 3 out of 10. You might want to chuck it on with some friends, but like, it's in terms of everything else, it's not the best thing in the world. And lastly, I saw Conclave. I do have a poster. I don't have it on me. I was not expecting this film to slap as hard as it did. I enjoyed it. A lot of people say it's kind of Oscar bait and substanceless and whatever, but I think this movie is very fun. Like, I don't give 2 shits about, you know, the Pope, and I don't really care about church that much, you know, to each their own. You kind of respect yourself and your own wishes, whatever. But a film about where the Pope dies and they have to vote for another one, this film does a great job of like holding tension. I really like the music, and I really like the lacking of music is very fun too. Yeah, you do kind of get to like the end of your second act where you start to find out, oh, there's certain people that you don't want, and then you find out like, oh, there's also other people that we don't want, and you know, everyone's got, you know, skeletons in their closet, and so on. But and then that's fine. It doesn't ruin anything about the film. Your ending is Yeah, ending is definitely things people say are like it could be the best and or the worst thing about this film, and I think it is the best thing about this film. I think it's so goofy, it's so dumb that I kind of like it. I also love there's like two characters who will talk to each other, and they'll have a really dramatic scene, and I just feel like the pauses that happen are a little bit too long, and it just feels like a Mass Effect 2 dialogue wheel, and he's just trying to pick his option to get the information that he needs, or like a Telltale game where it's like Cardinal Sam will remember this in the top right hand side. I just think I just think that's all I was thinking when these like really like tense scenes were happening, because you'd get people's faces, and then they'd also just be like, and then they like drop some like bombs or something, and then your main character's face goes. Anyway, that's very, hopefully that's not an obscure reference that people can understand. The visuals are very pretty. Your acting's very solid. Conclave, I think, is a very solid, like, it's like an 8. I saw some banging films this month, films that I wasn't expecting to A, see, and then B, just enjoy. I don't know. I think the movie wall is getting big. I'm gonna put all these on Le Cork board. And so join us next month when we do March's run of films. I feel like March has a couple of very strong contenders and a couple of absolute stinkers. I'm looking at you, Snow White. I'm looking at, Mickey 17 might be pretty fun. I know that the new Dave Bautista one just dropped, and that looks like absolute doo-doo, so that's going to be very fun to enjoy. So there'll be some stinkers as well as some pretty fun films in there. So make sure to first off like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. If you got to the end of it, let me know what you thought about any of these films in particular, or let me know about your takes. I feel like a lot of these films had some different charges to them, and that's okay. Art is definitely one of those ones you have to be able to accept that not everyone's going to enjoy them or feel the same way about them, and that's totally okay. To each their own. A conversation is important. Art is subjective. Anyway, so until then, everyone, I'll see you next time. Make sure to check out if you like any gaming videos. I do gaming videos here too. And I'll see you guys next month for more of The Wall.